Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back. So today I've got a tier list for you and we're going to be going over every single type of motorcycle that there is and we're going to be ranking them from worst to best. Now this video is not meant to piss anybody off, although I know it inherently will. And all motorcycles, in my opinion, they have an audience and they are meant to be fun first and foremost. So if I rank one of these motorcycles fairly low, don't worry about it. It's just my opinion and from my own experiences, however limited they might be. So if you disagree, definitely go and hash it out down in the comment section below. And I'm not going to lie to you, some of these motorcycles I have not ridden. So by default, I am going to rank them fairly high based off of my own impressions of them. But like I said before, definitely let me know down in the comment section if you disagree. Right, let's get started with everyone's favorite motorcycle, EV. Alright, so EVs. The most I've ridden is a hybrid electric, which was the Z7 from Kawasaki. So, and it does have a function where you can just ride it exclusively as an EV if you wanted to. But, okay, these types of motorcycles, I really think is going to kill the industry in a lot of ways, or at least it's going to stop a lot of riders from riding going forward. Yes, it might bring up a new generation of riders who are more interested in EVs, but right now the current generation of motorcyclists are over 50 years old, I think is what I read recently, and not many of them are all that interested in riding EVs, mainly because they're not going to feel the same, they're not going to have as much of a personality, you know, it's just not the same experience. So I think I'm going to put this down at E tier. I may move these around at the end a little bit, but I might drop this down to an F tier. I don't know. I want to give them a chance because I haven't ridden one myself yet. I do want to give them a chance, so that's why I'm ranking it as an E. Right, what's next? Let's go ahead and do scooter. So my experience on a scooter was right at the very start of my motorcycle career, and some people, including myself for the most part, I wouldn't actually say that these are, I wouldn't class these as motorcycles, to be honest with you. Yes, they have two wheels, and yes, they ride like a motorcycle in some ways, but in a lot of ways they don't. So most of them, in fact all of them I think, are automatic, fully automatic. They have a CVT transmission, and most of the time the seat, your feet are in front of you, so you're sitting in like a chair rather than sitting over the bike. And also the way it handles is totally different. The way how the power is distributed is totally different as well. Most of these are for beginners. And I know there are a lot of scooter enthusiasts out there, like Vespers and things like that. But for me, I think they're quite good, but I don't think I would ever rank a scooter above a type of motorcycle, apart from maybe an EV. So I'm going to put this one in D tier. Alright, let's do the off-roaders next. So let's start off with enduro. So as far as I'm aware, enduro bikes are purely off-road bikes. They can be used, I think, for trails, or they can be used for racing, as far as I'm aware. But again, I'm not 100% sure on that. But I know that there are riders out there who stopped riding street bikes and went exclusively to enduros just for that experience, because obviously it gives you that freedom that you would like to have on the street, but you don't really have on the street, you know what I mean? You can't exactly use all the power of these bikes, and because they're exclusively off-road, a lot of them you can still get as two-strokes because you don't have to register them or anything like that. That might be changing, I'm not sure, let me know down in the comment section below, but I'm going to rate these bikes quite high. I'm going to give them a B tier. The fact that there are riders that ditch riding street bikes, despite the fact that there are loads of fantastic street bikes exclusively for off-road experiences or dirt bike experiences, I think that says a lot about enduro bikes. Alright, so next up we've got dual sport. Now, I am going to rank dual sport a little bit lower than enduro, but basically, as far as I'm aware, they're a street legal off-road bike, so you can ride them either on the road or off-road if you wanted to. So they should have knobbly tires for off-road use, but mainly they're going to be used for on-the-road riding. And the main reason why I'm going to bump this down a little bit is because in order for them to be road legal, they have to be four-stroke. They have to fit under emissions regulations and things like that. So for me, a dual sport, despite the fact that it's going to have a very similar experience as an enduro, I think I'm going to have to give it a C tier. I don't know if that's fair or not, but two-strokes are good, man. They're seriously good. When you look at bikes like the Aprilia RS 125, it's a 125cc motorcycle, but because it's a two-stroke, it produces almost as much horsepower as an A2 bike would today. A four-stroke A2 bike. So you're looking at 400cc. It's absolutely crazy what a two-stroke motorcycle can do. But I believe, I might be wrong here, but I believe they have to be four-stroke and they have to be emissions tested before they are registered on at least UK roads anyway. I am talking from experience here in the UK, not other parts of the world. So other parts of the world, this might differ ever so slightly, because you might be able to ride a two-stroke enduro on the street, say in the United States. I'm sure that's entirely possible. But for here in the UK, I think a C tier is decent for a dual sport. Next up, we've got a Super Moto. Now, it gets a little bit confusing to me about what a Supermoto actually is, because it looks like an enduro bike, but it has exclusively street tires as far as I'm aware, or you could have slicks on them if you wanted to take them on track, but these are exclusively street bikes as far as I'm aware. Yes, you can convert them to exclusive track bikes, but for the most part they'd have different tires, different suspension setups, and maybe different brakes, something like that. So for the same reasons with dual sport, I'm going to put this one here in C tier, because again, you're going to get a very similar experience, and I have no doubt that if you put off-road tires, knobbly tires on a dual sport, it could probably do quite well as an off-roader. So maybe you have a spare set of wheels that have got off-road and one that's run for street riding or track day riding. Then yeah, it does give you quite a lot of flexibility, I suppose, this kind of platform. But I think Supermotos, as far as I'm aware, are more designed for street riding. But you guys, again, let me know down in the comment section if you disagree. So for me, it's going to go in C tier. Alright, so the next ones, let's do ADV. So adventure bikes, strictly they are supposed to be both street bikes and off-road machines, a little bit like dual sports, I suppose, but they're bigger, they're bulkier, they are literally designed for motorcycle camping. If that's what you're into, you go off-road, you find somewhere nice, and well, you might camp for the day or something, or camp for the evening or what have you, and you would use an adventure bike to do that. Now again, because they have to be street legal, because they have to cater for on-road use and off-road use, this is gonna upset quite a few people. I'm gonna put this down in D tier, mainly because they're a little bit generic. A lot of them are very samey, and I don't know, man. The thing is, so we've got adventure tourers, which we're going to look at next, but you could quite easily put off-road tires on an adventure tourer and turn it into an adventure bike, but there seems to be this divide in the community about what actually counts as an adventure bike, as we found out when we did our ride review of the Versys 1000 recently. But is that harsh? No, I don't think that's harsh, because I think dual sports and supermotos are better because they're lighter, you can do more with them, they're going to be quicker, they're going to be easier and better suited for off-road riding anyway if you decide to do that. And I think supermotos are going to be better for street riding anyway. These things are wheelie monsters, you know, because you're sitting really tall, the wheelbase is really narrow. Honestly, I think they're going to be a lot more fun than an adventure bike, in my personal opinion. If you put the right engine and the right gearing in an adventure bike, then I'm sure it could compete with a supermoto, a dual sport, or an enduro. I say enduro is specifically for off-road use, so I'm not going to count that actually. So dual sport and supermoto, I think it could compete at that level in some capacity, especially when it comes to taking pillion as well. That is a consideration here. I don't think you would take any pillion on a dual sport or a supermoto. The seat does allow it, but I don't think that's something that you would do, whereas an adventure bike, it is more suited for that touring aspect of things. I'm going to leave it in D tier for now, but that might change a little bit later on, because as good as a scooter, you know what, I think that's actually quite a good little comparison there. So, adventure touring. I'm going to have to put them in D tier as well. Mainly because, again, they're going to be exactly like an adventure bike, but with street tires, with street-orientated suspension setups, things like that. An ADV bike is certainly more versatile, but at the same time, how much riding do you think you're honestly going to do off-road on a proper adventure bike? I don't think you would do that much. 90% of the riding that a rider would do, I'm guessing, is going to be for street riding. Yeah, I'm going to stick to my guns. Adventure touring in D tier as well. They're basically an adventure bike, but designed for street use. Touring bikes, well, the thing is as well, these bikes, adventure bikes and adventure tourers, are pretty tall motorcycles as well. So not everyone really can ride them. I think it's easier to get kits for dual sports and supermotos or enduros even. I think they're more. I think they are more approachable for more people than bikes like adventure and adventure touring. My wife's dad, so my father-in-law, he was looking at getting an adventure tourer as his next bike, but yeah, when he test rode it, it was too tall. Some riders, they don't like that really tall seat height, and they have to lean over one side whenever the bike is at a standstill. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at D tier for now. All right, so now we're gonna start getting into the popular types of motorcycles. Let's start off with a touring bike. This here is a Goldwing. Honestly, these bikes are mile munchers, and despite the fact that they're not producing a lot of horsepower, they're not producing a lot of torque, when it comes to touring, there's not much that beats these kinds of motorcycles. Yes, you can do tours on all sorts of different bikes. You can do tours on super sports if you wanted to, or cruisers, sport tourers. They're not quite as kitted out as touring bikes are. Alright, touring bike, where am I going to put it? Because they're quite big and bulky for the most part, again, I don't think these kinds of bikes are all that accessible to everybody, at least not at the start of their riding career. You would have to start off on something like a sport tourer first before you got onto a touring bike. So I'm going to put this in C tier. In terms of riding experience, not the best. But if this is the kind of bike that you are looking for, then there's no other motorcycle type that is going to scratch that itch. So, seeing as we're talking about touring bikes, let's have a look at sport tourers. So, sport tourers for me are very good. And again, as I mentioned earlier, they do kind of blur the lines a little bit between super sport and sport touring and touring. So motorcycles like this one, which I think is the GSX 800 from Suzuki, this is a very comfortable motorcycle. You're sitting very tall, very upright, can do loads of miles with ease, but you've got all of that lovely sport fairing, so the bike looks incredibly pretty, and it's a bike that you can be proud of and you can show off to your mates. A lot of the time, sport tourers, they have the best of both worlds, so they've got torque and horsepower. That's what makes them incredibly attractive to a lot of riders, especially entry-level riders. But riders like me, advanced level riders, they can still enjoy a sport tourer a lot of the time. So for me, that's going to go in A tier. Sport tourers, honestly, they are some of the best motorcycles that you can buy, hands down. Especially because loads of them ride like nakeds as well, and I rank nakeds quite high, as we're going to find out in a little bit. What shall we have a look at next? Let's have a look at HEV, hybrid electric. So my experience on the Z7 hybrid from Kawasaki was very positive. I enjoyed the experience thoroughly, and the fact that it's got that e-boost function, it provides so much torque, but it's only for about half a second. But the potential for this stuff, I think, is there, man. Because you're getting the best of both worlds. You can ride the bike economically if you want to, save some fuel, ride it exclusively as an EV if you wanted to. Yeah, you can only get up to 40 miles an hour, I think it is. But that is plenty if you're going around town and things like that. It's perfect. The only issue is that I wish it was a plug-in HEV. So if you wanted to ride exclusively on the electric motors, or electric motor, should I say, that would have been really nice touch, or at least interchangeable batteries, so you can take the battery out, charge it, and plug it back in. Whereas at the moment, this generation of HEVs are, I think they get their power from the engine slowing down or from the brakes, something like that. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it basically uses regeneration to recharge the batteries. So pretty much once you're out of battery, you have to use the ICE, the combustion motor, to start charging it back up again. But it was a really positive experience, and I think these bikes do have a lot to offer a lot of people. And if they can develop this tech, I think it's going to be up near the A tier. Seriously, I think it's going to be really good. But right now, it's going to jump into B tier for me. All right, let's have a look at retro bikes. So this is the XSR 900 GP from Yamaha. Honestly, one of the best motorcycles I've ever ridden. And not all retro bikes are made equal. Like Yamaha, they really went all out with this bike. They've redesigned the fairing. It uses an MT-09 engine, yeah, but everything else around it is totally different. The seating position is super aggressive. The looks, they really do look like they've come out of the 1970s, 1980s, that kind of race era, maybe even a little bit earlier than that. But honestly, it was such a fun motorcycle. And that MT-09 engine, man, is class. It produces torque and horsepower. The spec sheet, again, doesn't really do it justice, a little bit like the MT-09. But when you're in the cockpit, when you're riding it, oh, it is seriously fun, man. But bikes like the Z900 RS from Kawasaki, or maybe even the Z650 RS, they are basically a Z650 or a Z900, just with some fairing tweaks. So it looks a little bit different, but this is a totally different beast. I think Yamaha, they really tried to go all out with this bike. I haven't had a go on an XSR 900 yet, just not the non-GP version. That one does look a little bit more modern to me, but honestly, these are A tier, man. At least from that experience that I've had anyway. And if the thing is about retro bikes is that they have the looks of old bikes, but they have all the modern stuff, all the modern kind of features, the way how a modern motorcycle would ride. They have all that jam-packed in there, and honestly, it's a fantastic experience, especially if you like the looks of these bikes. I wasn't 100% of a fan of this XSR 900 GP when I was looking at it on paper, but when I was looking at it in person, I didn't mind it, you know. I thought it looked alright. But I know, again, this is subjective, but I think they rank pretty high in this list. Alright, so speaking of retro bikes, let's have a look at cruisers, because you've got retro super sports and all that, but cruisers, they've always been retro, haven't they? This kind of motorcycle, I've had a go on the Honda Rebel 1100 and the Kawasaki Vulcan 650S. Both were very, very good bikes, and yes, even though they were parallel twin-cylinder engines, they weren't the V-twins that you'd expect from a cruiser. I think they're a lot of fun, and if anything, I'm going to have a lot of fun on a V-twin cruiser, if not more fun on a V-twin cruiser than I did on those other bikes. There is something to be said about perhaps the reliability of the bikes, maybe, and also with ever stricter emission standards and things like that. These bikes, they might not be around for much longer, at least buying from new anyway, because they are gas guzzlers. They are pushrod V-twins though, so yeah, honestly, I think this is going to be a fantastic experience. Not a lot of horsepower, not a lot of RPM, but tons of torque though. Yeah, and I like torque. You guys know me, I love torque. So for me, cruisers, I'm going to put them in B tier. Very, very good bikes. I don't think they're quite as good as Sport Tourers or these retro bikes, at least the current generation of retro bikes. But cruisers, they're up there, man. They're really good. Alright, now before we look at super sports and nakeds, I do have a couple of honourable mentions here. One, we've got classic bikes. I've got CC there for classic cruiser, but just classic bikes in general. So whereas retro bikes are modern motorcycles with retro style looks or retro style feel, these classics are the real deal. These are the bikes that you could get from the 70s, the 60s, the 80s. These are the actual real deal things. Now, there's a lot of classic bikes out there that are very, very good. However, there's lots of really, really bad ones, and especially as age gets to them, it just degrades them even more. So, as much as I want to give classics a really high score, I don't think I can, because again, I don't think they are approachable for the vast majority of people. I say vast majority of people. Vast majority of motorcyclists. If you're a motorcycle enthusiast and you like tinkering with the bikes, you like to, you know, really make the most of what you've got, then this is obviously a really good option for you. But for me, I think I'm going to put them in D tier. Just literally for that reliability. The thing is, you don't want to buy a classic motorcycle as your first bike. As much as it might look really nice, it might sound really nice, you don't want your first experience of a motorcycle to be, oh, it's unreliable and it breaks down every day, every week or something like that. You got to fix it all the time. So, yeah, not for me. But the next one we've got is classic or custom cruisers or custom bikes. Now, I don't know about you guys, but have you seen recently on the Bearded Mechanic, and I think it was a video on SRK Cycles as well, where they bought an Orange County chopper, and that's a custom bike, and they've had so many problems with it trying to get it fixed. I don't think it's fixed yet. It's been months and months and months trying to get that bike working properly, and it just isn't there. And the thing is, about mass-produced bikes, they have to work to a standard, you know. This handcrafted stuff, it might sound really good on paper, but you never know what kind of gremlins might come up, because a lot of them have got parts that aren't really designed to mesh together all that well. They might look absolutely beautiful, and maybe for the first couple of years they might be perfect running machines, but there's no guarantee that they are going to be that good. And also, they're incredibly expensive as well, so again, accessibility-wise, there isn't a lot there. A rider like myself, I couldn't afford a custom cruiser. Even if it's 20 years old, I couldn't afford one, which is crazy, despite the fact that I've got a ZH2, a ZZR 1400. These bikes are going for mega bucks. So, for that reason, they're going to go in D tier. I was going to put them in E, but there are lots of people that really like these kinds of bikes, and I can't deny that. So, custom bikes, they certainly have a place in the market. Again, if you're an enthusiast and you like tinkering with the bikes, or you have lots of money, then these are probably going to be very good bikes for you. But for someone like me, an average rider, I would consider myself an enthusiast, but someone on a limited budget, I can never get hold of one of these bikes, and even if I did, I'd be worried about breaking it every single day. Yes, they're artworks, they're masterpieces, but they're more like wall hangers, you know? They're more like paperweights. Is that offensive? Sorry, I don't mean that to be offensive. Like, they're nice to look at and stuff like that, but yeah, I don't think they're going to be that great of a riding experience anyway. All right, so we've got the two head honchos here, Super Sports and Nakeds. Okay, if you'd have asked me which is better, a Super Sport today or a Super Sport from 20 years ago, I would have put this in S tier. For the Super Sports that are 20 years old, they're very, very good. Bikes like the ZX9 that we've had, the Triumph Daytona 955i, honestly, they are so good. But modern day ones, they have no power. Up to 10,000 RPM. You're going over 60, 70 mile an hour before you even hit the power band of the bikes. As much as I love the tech and I love the experience of riding a Super Sport, riding them every day, I don't think I could do it. So Super Sports, they are necessary as well. We absolutely need to have Super Sports, despite the fact that they don't sell very well. At least the top end ones anyway. The 600s, I think they sell much better than the 1000s. But we need them, because a lot of that tech that they develop ends up trickling down into the cheaper bikes that actually end up making them the best bikes on a lot of these manufacturers' rosters. Super Sports, I'm going to put them in B tier. I know, very, very harsh. Super Sports, I think they are some of the best, yet some of the worst motorcycles out there today. Honestly, guys, you ride a Super Sport, especially a 1000, you ride a Super Sport, and you get on something like a Naked, it's no contest. Seriously. And I know that Nakeds, they really have this issue with the way they look. Not a lot of people like the way they look. I personally do. Most Nakeds I genuinely do appreciate the look of, but bikes like MT-09, ugly bikes for sure. But Nakeds for me, they are what super sports should be. They give you horsepower, they give you torque, they give you speed, they give you nimbleness, they give you wheelies for days. They give you so much. Perhaps some of the drawbacks to Nakeds are one, the lack of storage space a lot of the time. So despite the fact that you've got a sport touring / touring riding position, and you can do a lot of mileage on these Nakeds, for the most part, you're not going to be doing a lot of touring riding with a pillion, and you're not going to be doing a lot of riding with them with loads of camping gear, for example. You can't do it. There's not a lot of space, unfortunately, on these bikes to do a lot of touring with. But they're still the best bike going, hands down. S tier. Nakeds, honestly, if you've never ridden a Naked bike before, try it. It's seriously good. They are, and I've been pleasantly surprised with every single Naked bike I have ever ridden, even if it's as low as something like a Z400, for example. They're still absolutely fantastic bikes. Despite the fact that they're not producing a lot of power, but they're still really torquey. You can still pull wheelies with those easy. Man, that's an A2 bike as well. It's producing less than 45 horsepower. But they are more fun than something like an R3. They're more fun than something like a... I was going to say like a Ninja 400 or Ninja 500, but they ride quite a lot like Nakeds, and that's another reason why I've put Sport Tourers quite high up in the list. A lot of them ride like Naked bikes. The Z400, Z500, the Ninja 500, the Z500. Have I said those? Ninja 500, Z... the Zs and the Ninjas, for the A2 class of Kawasaki bikes, they ride very similarly. And so if you wanted those nice looks, you can still get that in the Ninja. Or if you really just want the ugly Naked look, you have that option as well. They're both fantastic bikes. So between Sport Tourers and Nakeds, again, Sport Tourers can be designed in one or two ways. Some of them can be designed for more horsepower in mind, some of them can be designed for more torque in mind. So there's lots of flexibility there in terms of what kind of motorcycle they can end up being. But yeah, Nakeds, absolutely 100% top of the list. Now, let's have a look here, because some of these I'm not so happy with now that I'm looking at it. EV, I'm definitely going to drop down to F tier. I'm going to drop Scooter down to E tier. Adventure bikes, classics, custom. I think that is a much fairer list. I'm sorry. Adventure bikes are definitely better than scooters, alright? Yes, they might have very similar functions in terms of their storage capacity and the comfort and things like that, especially adventure touring bikes, but adventure tourers, they have way more power, way more torque. The thing that lets them down is that top end horsepower though. When you look at bikes like the 1000 SX from Kawasaki and the 1000 Versys from Kawasaki, okay, I know they're both in the same brand, but they feel so different to ride. The 1000 SX has got so much power compared to the Versys, honestly. The Versys, yeah, has loads of power up to about 5, 6, 7, 8,000 RPM, then it really drops off. The 1000 SX, it just keeps going. It's like a train, man. It really pulls hard. So that's why Sport Tourers are so much higher than Adventure Tourers and Adventure bikes, despite the fact that a lot of the time they have the same engine. They are a little bit different. A lot of the time the Sport Touring versions have higher compression ratios, or they have different gearing. So, yeah, I think that is a fair list from my personal experiences, and over time I'm sure this might change. We might come back to this in a few years time and see whether or not my mind has changed on some of these, especially when it comes to the dual motos and the supermoto, sorry, dual sports and the supermotos. I think they could rank a little bit higher as well, and the enduros could rank a little bit higher as well. As soon as I've had a go on an enduro, doing some off-road riding, I seriously think that could be up at an A tier as well, because they look like so much fun, man. You know what I mean? Yeah, awful lot of fun. Anyway, everybody, thank you ever so much for joining us today on our tier list. I hope I've been fair, and I hope that most of you understand where I'm coming from when it comes to these kinds of things, but again, if you really disagree, let me know down in the comment section below. But let's be civil about it, alright? Come on. This is just one guy's opinion. And again, as I mentioned right at the start, this isn't designed to piss anybody off. Some of you may prefer some of these bikes for certain other reasons. Like, for example, if you are an adventure tour rider, maybe the seating position is far more beneficial to you if you have a bad back or something like that, whereas a sport tourer might be a little bit too aggressive for you. Little things like that, little nuances like that, I can't really account for in today's video. I'm going at this purely from a riding experience and an accessibility point of view as well, I suppose. But thank you ever so much for watching this one. Go ahead, leave that like, hit that subscribe button down there, leave a comment, and we'll catch you all in the next video. Take care, ride safe, have a good one.